Hello, good evening, and welcome to the third night of the Power of the People panel. I am so excited to be here this night for the live stream that Kamala Harris accepts her party's nomination to be the next Vice President of the United States of America. I am so excited to be here with this amazing kick-ass panel as we dive into the intricacies of this unprecedented time in American history, a crazy time for the Democratic Party, a crazy last two nights. I mean, we've had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez one night, and we've had John Kasich another. Things are in a crazy place. But tonight we're continuing the conversation about building a better future. For us, for the people that we've engaged with so far this week, it is so important for us to realize that we are building people power, that we're connecting people power. It doesn't stop or start on an election day. And so we're super excited to jump into this conversation. Tonight, like I said, California Senator Kamala Harris will accept her party's nomination for Vice President of the United States. Harris will be nominated by her sister Maya, her niece, Mina, her stepdaughter Kirsten Emhoff. Last night, we heard from some of the Democratic Party's rising stars, all making the case for a President Joe Biden. Last night, Presidents Bill Carter and Jimmy Carter addressed the convention, as well as Dr. Jill Biden, telling us the story of how Joe Biden can put this country back together. Over the last two nights, we've had amazing panelists to join our discussion, but I think this one may actually be my favorite. And that is, I've probably told everybody that they've been my favorite, and I meant it, like they were my favorite in the moment, right? But this one, I think I'm super excited for. So let me go ahead and introduce you to our panelists. So at first, we have Maya Valentine. Maya is a passionate political communicator working with House Democratic leadership. Her focus is changing the narrative around our policy decisions and making sure that our policy is representative of the people who it impacts. And so, Maya, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I think, the last two nights, I think there's been a lot to talk about, but overall, I feel like a lot of energy, and I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm super excited about tonight. I think there's going to be some really exceptional speeches, so I'm looking forward to it.
We hope so. Next up, we have Mr. Tavon Blair. Tavon is a dedicated strategic communications professional. He's a graduate of Dillard University, and he's a second-year media and strategic communications graduate student at the George Washington University. How you doing?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm blessed, and I just noticed I have 3 alphas on the panel, and that's quite a something. And I didn't do that intentionally, so let's just continue.
We appreciate it.
Let's just push forward. Next up, we have Andre Fields. Andre is a Black queer organizer who fights for justice, equality, and liberation for Black, brown, and marginalized people. Like me, he's a New York native, but he currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia with his pup, Bella. How are you and Bella doing?
I'm doing good. Bella's downstairs sleeping in her bed. I told her she can't make any noise for about 3 hours, no barking, no running up the stairs. So hopefully
I wish I could tell Jimmy that and he would listen. He currently is sitting outside the door, so we're going to hear some noise, I am sure, pretty soon. Yeah. Next, we have Mustafa Ali Smith. He is a writer, activist, and organizer based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His work in life is dedicated to serving communities around him, creating a more equitable and inclusive world. Mustafa, how you doing?
I am doing amazing. Actually, I cannot complain. I'm here with my family, but I am happy that you brought all of us together for tonight. So I'm just looking forward to the conversation.
Yay! And then last but certainly not least, Mr. Keyshawn Harris. Keyshawn's work aims to advocate for those left out and left behind. His background is filled with experience building coalitions and building better futures. He's a native of Georgia and currently lives here in Washington, D.C. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. It's a very historic night. We're going to nominate the first Black woman to be the vice presidential candidate for a major party. So I'm here with you guys on a historic night, and I'm excited to join the conversation.
It's crazy because months ago, when you and I were texting, I was telling you how much Joe Biden wasn't going to be the nominee. And I was telling you that, Elizabeth Warren, there was this new progressive future ushering in, that our country was going to change and an old white guy wasn't going to lead us again. And I was wrong. So here we are with an old white guy leading us. So
I think quite a few of us were wrong.
Correct.
Right.
So my question is, are y'all excited? I think for me, this has been the thing to get me excited. Doing these panels over the last few nights. I mean, before this, I was kind of like, I'm just a part of it. Let's just do it. But now I remember again what it is about politics and that goodwill nature of people to make difference in people's lives. And I'm not saying that, and that's not even like a partisan thing for me. It's just people who are genuinely in the fight to improve people's lives. So I know I'm excited. How are y'all feeling? What have you been feeling leading up to this moment? Maya, let's go ahead and start with you.
I think I've had a lot of mixed feelings about everything. When Kamala Harris first announced, her campaign, I was all kind of in her camp, and when she dropped out, I was struck with this feeling of like, oh my God, now what? Like now do I support? Because I think she's, largely symbolic. Like it's very important to have not only a diverse selection of candidates, but to see a Black woman really kind of step up meant a lot to me, but I kind of took that for granted. So when she dropped out, I was like, I didn't know what to do. And now that she's, the first Black woman to be considered for the vice presidency, I mean, I am just so I'm re-energized. I think I was for Biden. I was like, okay, I know who my candidate is and come November. But then when Kamala, when the decision was made to bring Kamala on board, I felt like a surge of just I don't know, pride, energy. And, of course, there's a lot to say about both of them, and I think that's kind of where my current mixed feelings are. Mm-hmm. But overall, it's empowering, and I think honestly, she did a lot for his campaign.
In 2 days she raised, or a day or two, $48 million. Some of his single greatest, fundraising days. Tashawn, both you and I, both at the beginning, did support Kamala Harris when she first announced, and were pretty sad when she dropped out. So, how are you feeling, and what about a Joe Biden presidency are you looking forward to, if anything?
For sure. Like Maya, I was devastated when I got the news that Kamala Harris was dropping out of the race. We were like, who do we turn to? There were so many other candidates, and you're like, I'm not really connecting with any one of them. And so we were like, okay, well, we're left with Joe Biden because he's the best chance to get us back to the White House. And so I'm excited. Kamala does bring that energy that was desperately needed to the Biden campaign, just like Representative Clyburn did in South Carolina to help turn the campaign around. So I'm excited. We are at a crossroads here in America. The America that we know is no longer here. Donald Trump has completely destroyed it and disbanded it within the last 4 years. And so when people go to the ballot box, they have a choice of a new America. And so you think about in this new America under a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris ticket, we will say Black Lives Matter, and we will say that genderqueer people belong here in America and have a place. And so when you look at the platform that the president has, and you're like, we're talking about protesting Goodyear tires today, which is producing a lot of jobs in Akron, Ohio. So I'm not sure if the president wants to win. I think he is just in a moment where he's like, I'm losing. What do I do next? So we're excited. We're going to turn out the vote and make sure people complete their census, because those are key things that'll make sure that we are creating this new America with John Lewis as a founding father.
Absolutely. So Andre, speaking, bringing in John Lewis and bringing in what, I know his death really great. I mean, him and C.T. Vivian really, and we've talked about this, how much it greatly impacted us and really, I think, put things into perspective, right? So what are you feeling, especially being down in Georgia, being an organizer that has been in Georgia, you know what I'm saying, for a long time? And did you see this happening? Because I know some folks that were down south who told me in the beginning, on Monday, we had y'all's fraternity brother, Mayor Ragland, on. And, the mayor was one of the first people, actually, one of the first mayors to support Joe Biden. And one of the things that Tim said was, we knew this, in his district. Bernie Sanders, I think, wound up getting like 2% of the vote. I mean, it was pretty, so he knew. So, Andre, did you know this was happening? Did you know that Joe Biden would be our nominee?
I think after South Carolina, I pretty much knew that it was going to be in the bag for him. Once I saw how the Black vote turned out for the vice president, I tried to deny it for a long time. Initially, I was a supporter of Julian Castro. He's just where my politics sit. I think he's genuine. I think he's smart. I think he's going to be a dynamic leader in the Democratic Party for a long time. But at the end of the day, I think people were looking for a steady hand, someone practical, sort of middle of the road, who they knew after such a wild card over the last 4 years of this helter-skelter type president who, pretty much is using Twitter as his bully pulpit. I think they wanted to return back to some sense of normalcy. If I think that is the best way for the country to go, I have different opinions, but
it's where we're at.
But it's where we are right now, and I totally understand it. And I think, it remains to see what President Biden, Vice President Harris administration is going to do. But in addition to that, I'm not really relying on those two people to fix the problems or solve the ills of this country. It's going to be up to the organizers, the people who are on the ground day in and day out, sweating and bleeding for our liberation as a nation. So, Biden could be president, Harris could be president, Warren could have been president, Harris could have been president, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to, the organizers, people in the streets who will hold them accountable and actually push forward the policies and that we want to see.
Tavon, I see you nodding your head. Do you agree?
I agree because I see a lot of comments from people saying that of I guess fears of seeing that these two people in office, will they make proper change? How are they going to be different from a Trump? And I think that we can't put so much power into these two elected leaders. And so I think that we have to obviously with ourselves, what we can do to advocate for specific issues that align with our work, seeing how what other elected, on the local level, this is on the national level. What are your local leaders doing? And who are those local leaders you're electing to office? I think those are the big things I want people to look at. And so everyone's in conversation now about, Biden and Harris, but who are these people in these offices in your, state, inside your local city or county? And that's the question. So I don't look at them as saviors. They all make mistakes. And they're regular people too. So that's something I have to look at.
Mustafa, you're on the ground in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, the home of Joe Biden, or the birthplace of Joe Biden. It's a state that, both Democrats and Republicans both aggressively, run after. So what are you feeling? And, how did you, especially in a city, like Philadelphia with such an extensive history of policing, police brutality, anti-Blackness, all of these things that have come up recently in our national discourse, how are you feeling with, not only Joe Biden, but with, someone who was once the top cop in California being on his ticket?
Well, I mean, even just listening to Andre, you said something that you really hit the nail on the head. Talking about even Julian Castro, this was someone who I really supported from the jump. Really because of the policies. I mean, Julian was one of the ones to put out a policing policy, not on criminal justice, but on policing, because he understood that was a specific issue happening in places like Philadelphia and really, quite frankly, across the country. And so once, Castro dropped out, for me, it was this place of uncertainty, trying to figure out who then was I going to support that really stood behind this conversation that we need to take a look at policing and how police departments are set up, how they are funded, and that centralized conversation. I think now, echoing again what all of you really have said, is that how we're using our power to vote and what that means for us. It's not really just about getting Biden and Harris elected. Yes, that's the goal, but it's what follows after that. And Andre, you hit this again on the head, is that we doing that, it's about what the people are doing, right? It's about the organizing and the activism that the people are doing. And, you know, Stefan, you're talking about how important it is in Philadelphia because this is like a battleground state. We have to get out and we have to mobilize the community. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do now, is bringing the part of the community that I'm involved in together to understand that, yes, we must vote, but yes, we also on the other side need to continue mobilizing and continue organizing so we can force our demands when Biden and Harris are elected into office.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as Senator Harris was just doing her first, call to action for people to get their vote plan. Tonight's theme is a more perfect union. Tonight, Democrats hope to show Joe Biden as the one to help build our nation back better. The DNC says America's not going back to where it was before Donald Trump's mismanagement of the pandemic and subsequent economic crisis, because for far too many people, that wasn't good enough. Tonight's opening segments will focus on gun violence, and the later convention looks to address climate change, immigration, women's leadership, and the economy. Expected to help make their case for Joe Biden as Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Governor Tony Evers, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, and former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. So we got some good people, right? Like there's that person. Yeah. And then you got, you know, President Barack Obama, who will address the party he's led for over the last decade, right? You know, it wasn't until yesterday that he no longer was the leader of the Democratic Party. There have been ample conversations, especially over the last week, you know, move further and further away from his administration. We're able to look at it more critically and more consciously. You know, there's a lot of critique that Barack Obama didn't set our party up for success, that, you know, he invested in old heads who didn't understand, you know, what America, you know, where the country was at, right? You know, we can all agree that we are in a completely different place than we were in 2016. And we're damn sure in a completely different place than we were in 2008 when Obama addressed his, you know, convention in Denver. So, you know, is there anyone that you all are particularly interested in hearing from tonight that you think is going to, you know, give the fervor necessary? Because here's the thing. Someone said after Michelle Obama's speech the other night, what more is there to be said? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's it. What I mean, now just focus on the policy. She gave us the call to action already. So, you know, Mustafa, let's start with you first. Is there anyone that you're looking forward to hearing from tonight?
Yeah, and I'm going to give the very cliche response and say Kamala, because I think what she says is going to be extremely important. Just going back to what you were saying about Obama, the thing about Obama is that he had a very symbolic election. And similar to what Maya said, the same is going to be with Kamala, right? And so the symbolic election is important, and it's something that we need to celebrate as a culture, but we also need to see how she's going to tailor her speech to talk about the actual changes that need to happen, aside from the fact that, yes, she is going to be the first Black woman in this space as a VP candidate. So I do want to see her talk about a lot of the structural changes that she wants to see happen. And I hope again that she addresses some of those.
You know, convention speeches, especially for vice presidents, are for vice president nominees, are 10 to 15 minutes. They're quick and easy. They tell a story about, you know, what it is that they believe, their story, how it matters. You know, Andre, do you think people know Kamala Harris?
Well, if you looked at the polls that came out the day after Biden announced his pick, she still had some name ID problems, which I found quite interesting, being that she had run for president for almost a year and a half. But I think I think the media and a lot of people on Twitter and, you know, on social media have tried to define her. You know, we hear Cop Mala and we hear, you know, she's the top cop. And she has to explain herself, right, for her record, right, and what she did as a prosecutor, as an attorney general. But we also should look at her record holistically of what she's done as a senator, what she talked about on the campaign trail, but also what she is going to say tonight. Because I think this is her chance to actually set her narrative, to tell her story. Too often we allow other people to define who we are. And I think, especially Black women, right? People are always trying to define who Black women are. You know, I personally work for one who has a pretty high profile, and, you know, people consistently try to do it to her. And I think that Kamala is going to have a good chance tonight to say, this is who I am, America. This is who I am, Democrats. You know, at this point, like Michelle Obama said, it is what it is. You know, you're either going to like me or you're not.
Or you're not.
This is who I am, and I'm going to walk forth in my truth.
You know, and kind of just a little, Maya, do you think, you know, one of the things that they said about Hillary Clinton is that, you know, she wasn't personable. People didn't know her, that she was cold, that she was a liar, that she was all of these things. But, you know, before Hillary Clinton decided to run for president, or even when she first announced, Hillary Clinton was one of the most popular elected officials in the country. The nation loved Hillary Clinton when she wasn't running for an office. And is that to say that it's just, you know, it's the same thing, that people think that the highest offices in the land are the boys clubs, and that, you know, that it doesn't matter how amazing, you know, if Kamala Harris was the absolutely perfect candidate, was she still going to deal with the same stuff that she's dealing with? I
mean, I think so. I think, you know, inevitably women have a different stage to kind of perform on in this country. But I do think that, you know, Kamala and Hillary are two different types of politicians. And, you know, I think it was so unfortunate the way that, you know, Hillary lost in 2016. I think that was such a grave mistake. But I think that Kamala is different. You know, I think tonight especially, she has an opportunity to reintroduce herself. Her campaign was like bad press, a lot of
that her communications team could not handle.
Yeah.
Media networks too.
Yeah, I think honestly, and not even to interrupt you, but I think that that's an amazing point that you just made.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris could have lasted. She actually could have gone a long way.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about that.
It was the fault of the chief of staff that she had, the campaign manager that she had, messing and fighting with the campaign or the communications apparatus. Because, you know, in my graduate program, Kamala was my focus all of last year. And I wrote every single detailed plan down to this is how you spin this question, right?
Yeah.
Because it seemed really easy. You know, it seemed as if that she is this woman who, with the information that she had at the time, made the best decisions that she could to protect the majority of people. And there was harm done. So let us sit down with those people that I caused the direct harm to, and how do we fix this, and how do we mitigate this, and how do we work through this? You know, Devon, we've had 4 years of Donald Trump, you know, tearing this country absolutely, completely apart. How important is it for, you know, everybody's talking about Joe Biden being the unifier in chief. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's supposed to do. But how important is it for Kamala Harris to nail down today that she is the one that is going to be, you know, the fierce, articulate debater that we need, that fierce communicator, you know, when things are going on in the country, Kamala Harris will be the person to take the podium to say this is what's going on.
I think people know that. Like, people know the strength that she has when it comes down to, you know, how she articulates herself, how she's able to, you know, stand up in front of people and let them know that, hey, I'm here when times get tough, and I'm able to articulate and let them know that, hey, I'm here to say, we are in a space where the country needs us, when people in communities need us, I'm there to do the work. And so I think that she's the first to speak on, I guess, in this moment, tell her story. Like Andre was saying, tell her story, redefine herself, because the story is there. It's just people are not able to remove that frame that's in front right now of, you know, her past. And so I want her to speak on it, say what she has to say, don't bring it up again. And I think that once that happens, people hopefully can take that and take this new narrative that she's giving and say, hey, I'm human. Listen to this. I know I messed up in certain areas, but I'm able to own that. I'm able to step forward and say, I'm here to serve this country.
You know, Kashan, do you think, you know, aside from Kamala, is there anyone else that you're excited to hear for? And do you think that there's anyone else tonight that can make the case for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris.
Absolutely.
Really
Absolutely. I am excited to hear Secretary Clinton have the opportunity to speak tonight. Hopefully we'll get the Twitter Hillary Clinton and the Hillary Clinton with the gloves off.
She definitely has been smart at the mouth. She has.
Right, because she's not running for office anymore, so she's able to say certain things that she wasn't able to say as a candidate. And then another point is, I've seen a lot of women politicians say that they've taken the pledge to stand up and defend the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats. And so I think that one thing that we see different from the primary when Kamala Harris was a candidate and now is that people are learning who she is, and they're learning about the work that she did, and they're learning how to identify misinformation that's put out there about her, about certain cases and different things. And so people are able to combat that. I do wish they were a part of the K-Hive, as we dub ourselves, a little bit earlier in the process, but we still welcome them, because at the end of the day, we're trying to build absolutely. We're trying to build a more perfect union, and so it's going to take all of us to come together.
But so I think let's go ahead, because I want to get this out of the way before we jump into the rest of the night. Because I think that let's do the criticism of her early in the night, and later in the night we can take some time to celebrate her. Mustafa, you and I are people who believe in abolition. We believe in a world without police or prisons. We believe in communities that aren't ravaged by police state violence, right? For me, I have spent a lot of time looking and reading and trying to get to the root of what happened out in California. Do you think, that that's going to be a problem for her? You know what I'm saying? Being this person who was this law and order, type of person, when, Republicans for decades screamed that they wanted somebody, law and order. They had law and order presidents, Nixon, Reagan, and it continued. Same thing with Black folks who, when, the 1994 crime bill came out, when the 88 crime bill came out before that, overwhelmingly Black people in the country supported this legislation. In California itself, their prison increase in X, Y, and Z was happening. And here was this Black woman who said, I want to do my part, not to incarcerate people, but to make community better. But regardless, she's working in a system that is inherently disadvantageous to Black people. So, right. How are you reconciling that? And what would you, how are you going into spaces, into community, and trying to make the case for someone who was once a prosecutor, whose job was, to put people behind bars?
Yeah, for me, this has been a lot to reckon with, to think about, and I think before she had the nomination to be she was going to be VP, I think it would have been a lot for her to step into this space. But I think now that this is who our nomination is going to be for VP, that I think she's in a better space. And I say that because I think it's not our focus anymore to look at her time as a prosecutor. We can critique it and criticize it, but we also have to question ourselves on is that helping this ticket? Is that helping the cause of what we're fighting for by criticizing her? And I think one of the things I just also want to note in here is that we also have to just take a look at ourselves and what is the result of us canceling out people because of something that they've done in the past, to the extent that they are not worthy of change, or that they aren't worthy of to be a transformed person. Yeah. And we should hold Kamala to that. We should recognize that, yes, she had a bad history, but where can she go from here? How is her story told that lets us know as voters, as citizens, that she can be seen in better light, that she can lead the people forward as we want her to? So I just say all that to say that, yes, her history was bad, but now in this space, we're trying to get her elected so we can mobilize under both her and Biden. That's where we need to be at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I jump in real quick?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, go.
And also, too, on top of that, I think there's a level of misogyny, right? That's rooted in this, and sexism just in general, because the way Hillary Clinton was attacked for the 94 crime bill, which she had no part in, she made comments related to it as First Lady. Senator Harris is attacked for her criminal justice record, but Joe Biden wrote the damn bill in 1994, right. And he's the one who pushed it as
and we have
not heard a peep of people really going after and attacking him with the level of vitriol that they have Senator Harris, or as they did Secretary Clinton in 2016.
Well, actually, and that's an amazing, brilliant point that I think we should stick with for just 2 seconds, because to me, it was ridiculous that Clyburn came in and kingmaked, right? That he came in and told the state, this is what you're going to do. And 5 minutes after the damn polls were open, it was declared for Joe Biden. And so that let me know he could have said any person's name out of his mouth. And that is probably what have happened in the state. So my question is, because, and I want to stay in this realm for a little bit, but why don't Black folks en masse in primaries support candidates who are fighting for them? You know what I'm saying? As Mustafa mentioned, Julian Castro had an amazing comprehensive criminal justice plan that came out before a lot of other people. Kamala Harris did have a comprehensive criminal reform plan that she put out. Elizabeth Warren, if Elizabeth Warren was elected president of the United States of America, Black lives inherently, we jumped about 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the future.
Yeah.
From her policies, but they all pulled hella low with Black people. So what is that? Andre, is it just the massage and walk that is inundated in our entire country? And how do we move past it? You know what I'm saying? Kashawn, for someone that has been working in politics for a while, you work with Black women in leadership. You know what I'm saying? What is that? Does that show up in her life? And do you expect that? I mean, I'm just trying to make sense of how we don't acknowledge that it was this thing. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't Kamala Harris, it just is who Kamala Harris so happened to be, born to be.
Absolutely. I think that it's tough to be a woman in America. 1 minute you're dealing with the misogyny and the hate, and then the next minute you're dealing with a politician telling you can't do what you want to do with your body. So it's up to the men and people to stand up for our fellow women and let them know that we support them and that we are here. We're not going to take that crap anymore because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Maya, in the primary, one of the things that was really interesting is that the heat that Kamala Harris received, Amy Klobuchar did not receive.
Yeah.
And it was her police department that she worked with, an officer that she had been involved with that would go on later to kill George Floyd. Yet Amy Klobuchar made it almost all the way until Barack Obama called her and Pete Buttigieg and said, hey, y'all need to go ahead and drop so Biden can be this nominee.
Yep.
So what did that make you feel?
I thought the scrutiny of Harris's former policies, they were like, every politician's going to get criticized for something. And unfortunately for her, it was like one headline after another. And it was unrelenting and it was totally unfair. And I think, it is obviously related to the fact that she is a powerful Black woman running for, commander-in-chief. And then Klobuchar, though she did come under fire much later, it was kind of too late.
It was too late. Yeah.
It didn't have the same kind of impact. Unfortunately, the narrative around Kamala was like, she's just a dirty cop, and I think it's already been said, she did harm and it had an impact on families, like a real impact, right?
Yeah.
But all of them are Democrats and they've all been in the game for over, 30 years. They've all voted for the same types of policies. They all should be under the fire. Harris did not create mass incarceration. She did not create systemic racism. She did not, oppress Black people for generations, right? These are systemic issues that have to be addressed internally a lot of the time, but also, like we were saying, through organizing and advocacy. And I think, it was just how she was framed as being kind of like this cop who was just going around and locking up
and
people.
Throwing people in jail.
It was that is so far from the reality. I mean, even don't get me wrong, she did bad, okay, and she's admitted it. I mean, she's defended her record, but I think there's also a little. There was an apology at one point, or some kind of honesty about it,
and individual conversations, especially when it came to the trans community that she had particularly harmed. That not only sitting down with trans activists, but also sitting down with some people across the state of California as well. But that, of course, didn't pick up.
It didn't pick up, and I think there is room for redemption, and I think there is room for grace. And Kamala Harris is not our enemy; she's just not. That's my point.
Not.
And, I think that I think we should, like someone had said earlier, looking at her career holistically, right? In the Senate, she's been championing, the anti-litigation bill. She's been pushing, she was like a sponsor, a co-sponsor, like a leading politician for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. She's done policy around protecting essential workers, which are, predominantly people of color. Like, she's done a lot of really good work. And I think, it just wasn't there when she was on the campaign. And Klobuchar, okay, it got in eventually, but then, now what?
Yeah.
Right after, so I was coming in with Maya, so the day after she launched her campaign for president, nothing but Twitter threads, trying to tell this narrative of her, and people taking that information and using it as talking points for when anyone talks about Kamala Harris. And so I think that is a huge piece that the campaign and just the party in general are up against. This space on Twitter that people are interacting, and there's no hey, let me go do my own research and do this side. Hey, let me go read up what the prosecutor's job actually is. Let me go see what she's actually done in general, besides just reading these two threads. And so I think you spent specifically the frame of how she was put out to the community, especially young voters. And I think that needs to be changed. And we have time for it, but it's just that was the big stop during her presidential race.
That they messed up.
And also too, if you look at her record in the United States Senate in terms of the most liberal progressive records in the Senate, she's number 3 or 4, right? After Bernie Sanders, after Elizabeth Warren, it's Kamala Harris. So this BS around her not being progressive enough is just. It's just fodder that, we just need to move past.
And a tool of white supremacy. That's the thing, is to completely destroy and take us away from each other. But that is to acknowledge that, not all skin folk are kinfolk. You know what I'm saying? That we do have a lot of reconciling to do. Barack Obama speaking at this convention tonight as more than 23 million Latinx immigrants across 5 states are eligible to vote. And under an Obama-Biden administration, more folks were deported from our country than ever before.
Yeah.
These are huge things that we have to reconcile, and Democrats have to get to the root of. One of the things that I want to talk about is someone made an amazing comment and talked about, we were making good points, but at the end of the day, we just need to get Trump out. And someone was saying, a lot of Twitter discourse, and I have to take a lot of time away from Twitter because everybody has a PhD and nobody reads a damn thing, right? That's the way that Twitter operates. Shout out to people who do it. It just won't be for me. But, one of the things that everyone says is, we're not, of course we're against Trump. Give us something to vote for. And I started reading, because y'all know that's my thing. And I was reading June Jordan, poet and essayist June Jordan. Before she died, she passed away in 2001. Or 2002, sorry. And she put together a lot of essays right after 9/11. And one of the things that she said after 9/11, after, Bush had stolen the White House, and after, all of that had happened, she had gone around and talked to Black prominent black people. For example, like Toni Morrison. She went and talked to Sweet Honey and the Rocks, Bernice Johnson Reagan. And she was talking to them about what do they feel right now. Because no one ever did what we're doing right now with them and put Black people in a room and said, let's talk about some issues, right? And, Toni was talking about, here I am as this Nobel laureate. I'm a Black woman in America who has done all this extensive work, and they haven't asked me anything, right? But Bernice Johnson Reagan said something, and she said, oh, we really do vote against people. We were voting against Bush, against Ashcroft, and against all the rest of it. And we know because we know, and we knew because we know, you have to play the game that's on the board. And I've been really sitting on that a lot. Of course, this is not what I wanted, right? You know what I'm saying? If it really was what I wanted, I wrote a piece that I said that the official I want to be president of the United States doesn't exist. The person I want to be president doesn't want to be president because they know the presidency isn't where they need to be. They need to be on the ground. They need to be in community. But these are the pieces that we've been dealt, right? This is what we got to work for. So what are y'all organizing folks to do in the community? What's that single voter issue that you were going and telling folks to, if you're having a conversation with someone, a Black person specifically, who's saying, I don't want to vote because both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are cops and then Trump is Trump. What is the one issue that you bring up to them and say, have you thought about this?
You tell them everything around them. The sidewalk they walk on, the way they park their car, the weed they want to smoke is off limits.
Right.
And that's the answer is that everything around us is political, so you can't avoid it. You can't say that I'm not into politics. Because the thing that you are upset or complaining about, there's a policy put in place of why you
Yeah.
One of the things that I feel like some people don't really understand is how intertwined politics is into their everyday life. Like literally everything that they do on a day-to-day basis has something to do with a policy that has been passed or some type of law. And so like, for me, it's really for someone who is questioning whether or not to go out and vote. I just try to first understand that person. Like, what's their story? Like, what are the things that they're passionate about? What is something that they're internally fighting for? Or even in their own personal community, what are they fighting for? And from that, I say, well, the current occupant who's in our office, are you able to do are you able to fight that cause with him currently in office? And if not, then we need to put the people in office in order to
fight with.
Exactly. And so I think people need to understand that framework, that lens, in order, like, we need to put these people in office so we can mobilize effectively and towards the causes that we're passionate about, right?
Yeah, as a long-term, organizer, Andre, especially with Black folks, you know what I'm saying, who have a very valid reason to distrust government, right? Like, no one here is denying that Black people have immense reasons to say, fuck this place and want nothing to do with it. That is, period, point blank, we acknowledge that. But there have been more hundreds of years of us not being a part of the process than there have been years of us being in the process. So, Andre, walk us through a little bit of the conversations you have as you're trying to register people to vote and get them to the polls.
Yeah, well, first, always trying to protect their right to vote.
Absolutely.
Because, that is under assault each and every day by, these crazy secretaries of state and governors and legislatures around this country, the president spreading disinformation about voting by mail versus absentee ballots when we know they're the same fucking thing. And it's just like, that type of thing really resonates with people. But, to answer your question, Mustafa made a good point about, folks actually being in a position, right, to where we can advocate for ourselves. And someone made a comment that I heard one time that said, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And I believe that it's imperative, one, not to shame people into saying like, oh, you had better vote because, if you don't, Scary Trump is going to be in office for another 4 years. But actually, giving people something that actually relates to their lives. I have cousins who are incarcerated. My father was incarcerated for most of my life. I have family members. My grandma, she was a lunch lady for a long time, right? My parents, they live paycheck to paycheck. So I can have these conversations with people because this is my life, right?
Yeah.
My first year, before I went to college, we didn't even know how we were going to pay for it, right? So these are struggles that people are dealing with every single day. I went to high school with folks who had immigrated to this country, and who were undocumented, right? So I know, and I have seen people who literally struggle each and every day, who have struggles in their lives. So it's much easier to have these conversations. And I'm not going into most of these conversations with saying, okay, I want you to vote for this person,
right?
Also, like, hey, what are your issues?
Right.
Problems that you're dealing with, right? And what is the type of government that you would like to see? And then explaining to them, like, hey, we probably won't be able to get everything that we can, but we can advocate for the type of government that we want. We can reimagine the society that we want to live in.
Yeah.
I think
Andre, you make it personal.
I love some good reimagining America.
I think that is such a so well said, Andre, and I think we're like Stefan, you were saying, it's not unimaginable to meet someone of color and see like a hesitancy about trusting government and about faith in the electoral process. It's like you said, it's been attacked, it's been undermined, and there's a lot of misinformation floating around too that skews like how we participate in our own democracy. But I always think back to Nicole Hannah-Jones, 1619 Project, and her essay was so powerful to me because she was essentially saying like the democracy itself, the fight for true democracy, has always been at the center of the Black freedom struggle.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because if when you think about these liberties, right? Who has been denied freedom?
Yeah.
You don't fight for democracy if you don't have a sense of what freedom is, what privilege is, right?
Yeah.
You fight for it because you don't have it, because you're pushed so far from the margins. Yeah. But you understand in essence what that can do for you and your community. And I always like try to, reframe, her essay whenever I talk to someone who might be hesitant. It's like, if you're not fighting for, democracy, for freedom, then, like I guess it's like, what's the point?
What are you doing? Yeah.
Like what is this? And that's what it really is. Your vote. I know John Lewis, would always say, like, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like the most powerful nonviolent tool you have, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't just because it's pretty to say, it's because it's meaningful. It is what it is, and I just kind of always reflect on that. Like, we're fighting for it because we've never really had it, but we understand the good it can do.
And that right there, all of that is what has been at the center of what I have been feeling. You know what I'm saying? Kashawn, months ago, you had, we were talking about some type of, you wanted to take some moderate steps into progressivism. And I didn't understand it. I was like, oh, that's bullshit. Like, excuse my French, you know what I'm saying? But that's nothing. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It wasn't until the other day, Ari Melberg did a MSNBC interview with Dr. Brittany Cooper out of Rutgers and with Cori Bush. And, Cori Bush, a phenomenal progressive who has, just finally taken out the Lacey dynasty out there in Missouri, who is an organizer who is coming in to crystallize the movement in Congress, which is exactly what we need to, have people doing, going from the streets straight into Congress. That's the work that we need to do. But one of the things that Dr. Cooper said that it sat on me so heavily is she goes, and basically was making the same arguments that this thing that Kamala Harris isn't progressive is bull. Like, that was, I don't know who created that, but that was wrong. But one of the things that she says is, the presidency isn't progressive. The whole job of the whole point of the presidency is to conserve the republic. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
The presidency. So Kashawn, how do you navigate and talk to people who, because you do have progressive values and vision, how do you help people see the long-term struggle as well as Bernice Johnson Reagan said, fighting with the pieces we got on the table now?
Absolutely. It started. Thank you for mentioning my moderate approach to progressivism. But we have gotten to a point where a lot of people have lost faith in their institutions. Trump has just completely disbanded our institutions. The Congress is not stepping up to do their job to make sure that they hold him in check. He's taken a Supreme Court seat. And so I think what we're seeing is a dynamic shift in America. And it even happened with me. I was quick to say I'm the pragmatic progressive like Hillary.
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. The pragmatic progressive.
Pragmatic progressive.
Okay.
Yeah, pragmatic progressive. But now we have over 30 million people without jobs, people who are standing in line at food banks. And so you can't come to this, address this problem with a moderate policy. We have to be progressive if we're really going to lift people out of poverty and create a new America. And so when I go out and talk to people, one thing I try to do is listen first and meet them where they are. And that's something that the Georgia NAACP taught me, was like, you have to meet people where they are when you're talking about registering to vote, when you're talking about census, when you're talking about actually participating in the process. And so I try to meet them where they are and tell them, like, this is how we get to those steps. This is how we create a better America for you and your family. This is how we make sure that you don't have to worry about those things that keep you up at night, because we truly want to make America better for people, better for women, better for genderqueer people, and better for people who just want to raise a family and live their lives. So that's how I try to connect with people.
And on that topic, and this will be our last question right before our break, because we're getting real close to some good speeches. But one of the things that you just talked about, we all just want to be able to have that access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Absolutely.
When I talk to my family, we're not sitting here talking about wanting to be millionaires and billionaires. We're not sitting here talking about, that we want to be the most powerful, this, that, and the third, that we want to, be some global manifest destiny, imperialist nation who wants to do X, Y, you know what I'm saying? Send nukes and guns everywhere. That's, when I talk to my family, they just my dad wants to make sure that his boys and his girls are good, that they're not under constant threat and surveillance of the police state. He wants to make sure that when it comes time, for him to retire, that he's taken care of. He wants to make sure that my grandmother, has access to the medicine that she needs, but also the benefits due to her as a military spouse, as a veteran spouse, all of these things that we're having to just work through. What does it say? Kamala Harris, not that, but Kamala Harris, one of the things that she did, and I loved it, she talked about in her first speech, 3 a.m. kitchen table talks. She talked about that thing that kept families up. She talked about just getting on to get on. And people had this thing that was like, well, Kamala Harris, she's this millionaire. Kamala Harris married into money, and it's not her money. And we're not even talking about that. She is a person who really made sure that we were understanding that the things that are facing every single day Americans, they're not these huge, those of us that have the ability and the time to read Black revolutionaries, to think about and to imagine a world beyond this. I mean, that we're privileged to do that. You know what I'm saying? To conceptualize this world, because they're too busy worried about what's going on today.
Right.
So as we get ready to prepare for, the next half of the convention, how do we sell this other than this is a chance to make America open? You know what I'm saying? Everyone said, I don't know, as someone who was extremely active in 2016, I bet a lot of y'all were too, I didn't get the same feeling that it was a chance to remake America, right? Like, I just was like, Hillary Clinton, honestly, she's not that horrible of a person. Here are these policies that but now I genuinely believe we are at that crossroads between reconciliation and destruction.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for y'all, is it dramatic to say this is life and death? You know what I'm saying? Is it? Because there are people who have told me, you know what I'm saying, regardless, it's still going to be that. Like, if Donald Trump gets elected again, we'll be able to make it. I genuinely don't think we will.
Absolutely not. No question about it.
I think we're never safe when you're Black,
Absolutely.
when you're queer, when you're a woman, when you're trans, when you're poor. You know, if you are a part of any marginalized group in this country, you are not safe. I think it's amplified, right, with under a Donald Trump presidency. But I would not say that I would take that for granted under a Biden-Harris presidency,
exactly,
right? Because no matter who sits in that chair, you know, we are always going
to march the next day,
fight for our lives, right, and our dignity and our humanity in this country, because that is how it was designed. You know, we were 3/5 of a person, you know, in the Constitution, and I still feel that most people see Black and brown people and marginalized people as that. So another 4 years under Donald Trump could be catastrophic. I would not say that is hyperbole at all, because I mean, we've seen what he has attempted to do in the first 4, and if we get, you know, lazy over the next, you know, couple days, right? We have what, 75 days left.
75,
yeah.
You know, this could be life or death. And I think, just to your point too about 2016, we had Obama for 8 years, right? So most people are like, you know, it's good.
We were riding on
right off into sunset.
You
know, with Hillary Rodham Clinton, she is, you know, political royalty in a sense, and they thought Trump was a joke. And what happened? You know, we had a
we got made the joke.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't think we need to, you know, make that mistake, you know, twice in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
I think also, for myself, like being from Chicago, our racism there is not in your face. And, you know, like, I went to school in the South. I experienced life in Georgia for a bit. And I think that when this Trump presidency is kind of, you know, woken up all these people that, that, you know, believe in, you know, his base. His base they see him as a voice for them. And they have, you know, I think it was Charlottesville or something in Virginia. When that situation happened, I was like, hold on, this is not the same America that I've been seeing. Because I think we all were blinded with, you know, Obama in office and really picture America is back normal, change is coming, and then Trump got in office, all his people, especially, you know, in rural counties, rural parts of the country, they exist and they believe in our saying we're not. They see us as just, you know, boy, girl, those what city you're supposed to be at. You should not be in this place. And I think that this is life for that right now.
Yeah.
And we've been experiencing that for these past 4 years.
I think it's really interesting because, you know, Obama, you know, kind of brought with him like this idea of post-racial America. So I, like a lot of people, you know, I was, when I remember I was in college, and when Hillary got like California, we were like, oh yay, you know. And then I watched as like one by one, these states turned red.
The literal saddest night of college.
I was like, literally, people I didn't know were like coming up to me and hugging me and, you know, crying. And I just remember thinking, you know, I had a lot, I think I've been privileged in my life to not experience a lot of, you know, overt discrimination or racism. But watching this map on like CNN turn red was the biggest illustration of racism I've ever seen in my life. And I was scared. But in contrast, it's 2020 and we're in a moment of racial reckoning. And so I think it's life or death because our country is at a point where it was not at 4 years ago, when I thought it was like, you know, oh, Hillary, it's going to be great, you know. And
we're going to brunch.
Bring the sound.
Everything's been brought to the surface that was not to the forefront, you know, 4 years ago. So it's definitely there's so much more at stake, and that's why I think the, you know, Biden-Harris ticket is so incredibly meaningful, especially having Harris on this ticket, because I think it was, you know, a sign of, you know. We're listening, we hear you, and this is needed. So I think there's just so much more at stake. And, you know, I don't personally know if our country can survive 4 more years of Trump, mostly because it'll be a permission for him to continue
to do whatever it is that he wants.
Exactly. Like we have to impeach him, okay? Like it didn't work, so this is it.
We're living in post-Obama right now. We haven't done the damage of Trump yet.
You know, and the thing is really
for the Supreme Court as well. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
literally,
Ruth cannot do it any longer.
It's not even just Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? You think about the age of some of like the other picks, like Sonia Sotomayor is like in her late 60s, right? Stephen Breyer is in his like late 70s, or 80s. So that's like 3 possible picks in
the next 4 years at least.
This is like a full like conservative
bench,
So that's scary.
It's terrifying.
And it's also those local judges. Like Trump has had over 200 judicial appointees because the Senate is just pushing them through. So we have to talk about that. That's also a part of that criminal justice reform, is that we got to protect the court system. Like this, we might not feel it now, but our children will feel it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and take a 5-10 minute break. Be close to your monitors, though, just because they said that Clinton was supposed to go on just before 10 or just after 10. And I don't know how the convention schedule is going to go. So we'll be right back in about 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see y'all soon. Make sure you mute your mic so we don't hear what's going on in your background. And I will take everybody off the screen.
To building a society where fairness and equality and opportunity applies to everyone. Joe Biden for women. So go ahead and celebrate, you rabble rouser, you rule breaker, you force of nature. Our country, our world needs you. Keep rising and vote.
Soon as
the morning after the last election, I said, we owe Donald Trump an open mind and the chance to lead. I meant it. Every president deserves that. And Trump came in with so much set up for him: a strong economy, plans for managing crises, including a pandemic. Yes, we Democrats would have disagreed with him on many things, but if he had put his own interests and ego aside, seen the humanity in a child ripped from her parents at the border, or a protester calling for justice, or a family wiped out by natural disaster, that would have been a good thing for America and the world. I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now. Throughout this time of crisis, Americans keep going, checking on neighbors, showing up to jobs as first responders, hospitals, grocery stores, nursing homes. Yes, it still takes a village. And we need leaders equal to this moment of sacrifice and service. We need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Everyone has a story about Joe's caring and empathy. I remember him calling after my mother, Dorothy, died, and we talked about being raised by strong women. The best testament to Joe is how he's cared for his family. And how great is it that Dr. Jill Biden plans to keep teaching as First Lady. And Joe picked the right partner in Kamala. She's relentless in the pursuit of justice and equity, and she's kind. When her press secretary, Tyrone Gale, was dying of cancer, she dropped everything to be with him in his final moments. I know something about the slings and arrows she'll face, and believe me, this former district attorney and attorney general can handle them all. So this is the team to pull our nation back from the brink, but they can't do it without us. For 4 years, people have told me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could do it all over, or worst, I should have voted. Look, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. If you vote by mail, request your ballot now and send it back right away. If you vote in person, do it early. Become a poll worker. Most of all, no matter what, vote. As Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders warned us, If Trump is reelected, things will get even worse. That's why we need unity now more than ever. Remember back in 2016 when Trump asked, "What do you have to lose?" Well, now we know our health care, our jobs, our loved ones, our leadership in the world, and even our post office. But let's set our sights higher than getting one man out of the White House. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to give us so much to vote for. Let's vote for the jobs that Joe's plan will create: clean energy jobs to fight climate change, caregiving jobs with living wages. Vote for emergency relief that lifts small businesses and saves hardworking people from foreclosures and evictions. It's wrong that billionaires got $400 billion richer during the pandemic, while millions lost their $600 a week in extra unemployment. Vote for the parents and teachers struggling to balance children's education and safety, and for healthcare workers fighting COVID-19 with little help from the White House. Vote for paid family leave and healthcare for everyone, for Social Security, Medicare, and Planned Parenthood. Vote for dreamers and their families. Vote for law enforcement purged of racial bias that keeps all our streets safe. Vote for justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, because Black lives matter. Vote for honest elections so we,
Come
not
on,
a foreign
from super predator
adversary,
to Black
choose
Lives
our
Matter.
president.
Come on, Ms. Clinton.
Vote for the diverse, hopeful America we saw in last night's roll call. And
She
don't
really
forget,
does look good.
Joe
Nice and
and
refreshed.
Kamala can win by 3 million votes and still lose. Take it from me. So we need numbers overwhelming so Trump can't sneak or steal his way to victory.
Come on, Ms.
Text
Minnie.
She throwing shade.
90330 to get started. 100 years ago yesterday, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. It took 7 decades of suffragists marching, picketing, and going to jail to push us closer to a more perfect union. 55 years ago, John Lewis marched and bled in Selma because that work was unfinished. Tonight, I'm thinking of the girls and boys who see themselves in America's future because of Kamala Harris, a Black woman, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, and our nominee for vice president. This is our country's story, breaking down barriers and expanding the circle of possibility. And to the young people watching, don't give up on America. Despite our flaws and problems, we've come so far. We can still be a more just, equal country with opportunities previous generations could never have imagined. There's a lot of heartbreak in America now. And the truth is, many things were broken before the pandemic. But as the saying goes, the world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. That's Joe Biden. He knows how to keep going, unify, and lead, because he's done that for his family and country. So come November, if we're strong together, we'll heal together. We'll redeem the soul and the promise of our country, led by President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Okay, Miss Mamas.
Yeah, I like the way she said vice president Kamala.
So, y'all, my question, because one of the things that she talked a lot about was in 2016, the question was asked, what do you have to lose? Obviously, we have seen everything that we have had to lose. And y'all did a fantastic job of laying that out before we started. I kind of want to talk about the big tent policy of the Democratic Party right before the speaker comes on, because I kind of want to hear what she has to say as well. Is this party, are we supposed to have room for people like John Kasich? Are we supposed to be the party to where, we have a speaker and a minority leader in the Senate that aren't supporting the progressive candidates that are running for office across the country? What does it say about us as a changing party that these people are still the ones leading us? Because all of, House Democratic leadership is old.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that anything's wrong with that, but it's just saying that if we're supposed to be this party bringing in a new America, we can't do it with old America.
Yeah, I think this is just a brief comment on it. I think there's a struggle with identity that the Democratic Party has, especially if you have these older folks in positions. I'm talking about the speaker. Oh wait, you want to tune in this first?
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. When you have like the speaker and other folks who are sticking by the status quo, and what society is telling us is that we don't need the status quo. So I think there's this reckoning that we have within the Democratic Party with who we are and what's our identity, what's our stance on this. And there, as we see, like there's just batting heads. And I know like Emma, she talked about it yesterday, is that people in the Democratic Party are in this space where they're believing they believe different things. And as we're talking about how we can actually unify the party, that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
I think Jay-Z said it best. Nobody wins when the family feuds, right? And what he meant by that was, in this context is like, we're going to have the AOCs, right? We're going to have the Ayanna Presleys, the Ilhans, the Rashidas, right? The Cori Bushes. But then we're also going to have room for people like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer and whatnot, because the party isn't monolithic, right? And I think we pride ourselves on being this party of diversity, of not just demographics, but of diversity of ideas. And I see the speakers on right now, so
let's listen to what she has to say.
Yeah.
People of color and LGBTQ. Our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power.
She also looks well rested, and I know that
centennial of women, finally women winning the right to vote. We do so with 105 women in the House. Proudly, 90 are Democrats. To win the vote, women marched and fought and never gave in. We stand on their shoulders, charged with carrying forward the unfinished work of our nation, advanced by heroes, from Seneca Falls to Selma to Stonewall. 4 years ago, when President Obama and Vice President Biden were in the White House, they made us proud, and their leadership made our country great. In that spirit, we come together now, not to decry the darkness, but to light a way forward for our country. That is the guiding purpose of House Democrats, fighting for the people. We have sent the Senate bills for lower health care costs, for bigger paychecks, for cleaner government, protecting John Lewis's voting rights, and enacting George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We've sent the Senate bills to protect our dreamers, LGBTQ equality, preserve our planet for future generations, and even more. All of this is possible for America. Who is standing in the way? Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. Our nation faces the worst health and economic catastrophe in our history. More than 5 million Americans are infected by the coronavirus. Over 170,000 have died. The science-based action in the HEROES Act we enacted 3 months ago is essential to safeguard lives, livelihood, and the life of our democracy. And who is standing in the way? Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. Instead of crushing the virus, they're trying to crush the Affordable Care Act and its pre-existing conditions benefit. As Speaker of the House, I've seen firsthand Donald Trump's disrespect for facts, for working families, and for women in particular. Disrespect written into his policies toward our health and our rights, not just his conduct. But we know what he doesn't, that when women succeed, America succeeds. And so we are unleashing the power of women to take our rightful place in our national life by championing a woman's right to choose and defending Roe v. Wade, securing safe and affordable child care, preserving Social Security, and passing equal pay for equal work. Who's standing in the way? Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. So here's our answer. We will remember in November when we will elect Joe Biden president, whose heart is full of love for America, and rid the country of Trump's heartless disregard for America's goodness. Joe Biden's faith in God gives him the courage to lead. Joe Biden's love gives him the strength to persevere. Joe Biden is the president we need right now, battle-tested, forward-looking, honest, and authentic. He has never forgotten who he is fighting for. And Kamala Harris is the vice president we need right now, committed to our Constitution, brilliant in defending it, and a witness to the women of this nation that our voices will be heard. Our mission is to fight for a future equal to the ideals of our founders, our hopes for our children, and the sacrifices of our veterans, our brave men and women in uniform, and their families. We will increase our majority in the House. We will win a Democratic majority in the Senate. We will elect Kamala Harris vice president, and we will elect Joe Biden president of the United States of America. God bless you, and God bless America.
Nancy Patricia De La Rosa Pelosi. Okay. So I think it's so interesting. I mean, after hearing now both House and Senate leadership, it's this focus on on Joe Biden being this family man that knows how to connect and knows how to be a human, which is very interesting. Because Michelle Obama was really the only person in 2018 and 2012 that had to make that case, right, for her husband. Everybody else talked about his policy and all the amazing things that he was going to do for the country. Why do you think that is such a focus of the convention, you know, telling people how good of a human Joe Biden is?
I think it's because, you know, Democrats really win when they paint, you know, families, the priorities of families against the priorities of the corporate elite, et cetera. More people, like Michelle Obama had said the other night, which I thought it was such a great point, recognize themselves in Biden than they do in Trump. That's just what it is, right? And I think that, like, by framing Biden as this, you know, guy you just want as your neighbor, you know what I mean? Just a friendly, you know, kind of person, it makes him more relatable, and it makes him, like we were saying earlier, this candidate who does bring back whatever sense of normality that people are searching for. They really do have to normalize him in a way, and they have to make him into a candidate who's, you know, you can go and, like, you know, talk over, you know, coffee with, you know, he's just that kind of guy. But honestly, I do think that as a characteristic, Biden is just a friendly, you know, person. I mean, they all talk highly about him, and they've all known him for so long. I don't think it's a lie. I think it's easy for them to kind of put him in this.
Lindsey Graham cried when he talked about.
I do remember that.
Joe Biden. Mustafa, do you think being nice is good enough? I mean, do you think that we would care so much if Joe Biden was nice if we didn't have, you know, someone that's equivalent to the Antichrist in the White House?
I think his character is important. I think painting this picture that he is a nice person, like Maya said, like this is a person that we would want as our neighbor, right? I think as Democrats, as the collective, we need to put this picture out there because people resonate with that. Like it's personal to them, and they can say, oh, this is someone I want in the White House, aside from who's currently there. And this is, I'm going to put like my money behind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Kashan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've just seen American leadership just decline tremendously, and Trump demeans world leaders. He demeans people here on the domestic side. And so people are just looking for someone who they feel thinks of other people when they make decisions. We have President Trump in the White House making decisions to keep himself in the White House, to keep him having access to the perks of being president. I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, yeah, Trump just cares about what he wants to do. He doesn't care about anybody else. And so I think that's important, because when you're running a campaign, you have to, as a candidate, you have to position yourself to be where somebody say, oh, I might want to go grab a beer with you, or go take a shot with you, because I feel like I can connect with you. So I think that's
was one of the things that folks said about Hillary Clinton. They didn't think they could go grab a beer with her, right? They didn't feel like they could be connected with her. Taban, we know, that this country is in the middle of an economic, a housing, food, racial pandemic and crisis. This racial crisis and pandemic has, been affecting this country for 400 years, right? Do you think that with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we can actually, as a nation, reckon with our past and how much it influences our future and our present? You're muted, babe.
The way things are going right now, I think we have a door that's open for opportunity for us to push them to hear us out and put all of our, well, really push the ideas and the things that we want to see on the table. And so I think that there, with the way that this race is going, and people are already like throwing out that, who they are, their backgrounds, you're going to need support in some way. So by seeing what the people want, the people are fighting for, you're going to have to listen. And so I think more doors will be open with a Biden Harris ticket than Trump and Pence or whoever his VP will be. It's important that people realize that the opportunities are there. Like I just said earlier, it's up to the organizers to really gather these people up together to raise these voices and to say, hey, these are our issues, fight for it. These are our issues, make sure something happens. So it's there. We just have to make sure we're more vocal.
Yeah, and let's take a step back and let's think about what the speaker was saying. Democrats in the House, Democrats had the largest, midterm victory either ever or in a very long time, right, in 2018. And the speaker made sure, she constantly does this, but I think, Democrats have to do a better job of being on the offensive and saying that it is Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton and Rand Paul and all of these people, these Republican senators, that are blocking progress. So what do we need to be doing up and down the ticket? You know what I'm saying? Because it'll be great, you know what I'm saying, if we have Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, but if we still have a Republican controlled Senate, in which Mitch McConnell is leading it, we got a problem. So how do we get people fired up from down ballot all the way up, Andre?
So I think one thing is Donald Trump, his tentacles have just stretched so far across this country that people feel that if they grab onto them, they'll get some of that juice or whatever, and he'll embrace them, and the people who love him will embrace them as well. But one thing I think we need to do is fight like Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats have done, right? What have they done? They passed some of the most progressive legislation in the history of this country, right? After George Floyd died, who ever thought we would get a criminal justice reform or police reform bill as progressive as that, right?
Yeah.
Whoever thought the House would actually impeach the president, right? Prior to 20, there was a lot of, back and forth of, let's calm down the impeachment talk and let's focus on the economy. But no, she started, fighting, but I think there wasn't as much fight in the Democratic Senate, with Chuck Schumer and a lot of the folks over there. You had one-offs like Harris and Warren and folks and Booker who really wanted to have that fight. But I just think it just goes to the lack of political acumen that some of those folks have. Nancy Pelosi is head above heels, a great political leader than is Chuck Schumer or most of these folks. But what we're going to need to do is we're going to have candidates who fight. People like Raphael Warnock here in Georgia, right? People like Mike Espy over in Mississippi, right? Like MJ Hager down in Texas, right? So I think there are good and great candidates who are up and down the ballot. But I would even say let's go even further down to some of these state houses and these state legislatures. One thing that Barack Obama did under his president, he did not do the political building
that he should have been doing
and a leader of a party should be doing. So now we are playing catch up. But luckily, there are leaders in states who have been doing this work, organizers who have been doing this work for a long time. We can see the Georgia House of Representatives flip for the first time in over 10 years. Texas has a chance to flip one of the houses of their legislature. And there are a couple other states as well. So I think, people are doing the work, but they have to fight, right? They have to sweat. They have to want it. Know that Joe Biden, a white man, will not save this country, but it's going to be the people who are on the ground each and every day who fight and who have been fighting who are ultimately going to right the ship.
You know, and one of the things that we brought up Sweet Honey in the Rock earlier, but one of the things that they say is those who work for freedom cannot rest, right? Mustafa, how are you hoping that movement continues going forward, right? Because there are some people who do believe that, you know, electing, and I don't think it's those of us who live at the margins. I mean, I think it's a lot of, you know, white folks who have just finally woken up in this country who genuinely believe that, you know, electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would fix most of our problems, right? So how do we keep movement power building and going, right?
Yeah, I think the harsh reality that we have to face is that we need to understand electing Biden and Harris is simply not going to fix our problems, right? We have to put in effort and continue to organize and do the things that we need to do as a collective community in order to make the changes happen. One of the things that I've noticed from some of the speeches today, and even in previous nights, is talking about, you know, the previous years before Trump. And I just want to point out there that a lot of the problems that we're seeing today, the people without jobs, the issues with healthcare, you know, the problems that are going on in our education systems, you know, the incarceration, like these are things that didn't just appear during the Trump presidency. Like these are things that have happened for as long as I can count. Like
As long
these
as
have
America's
always
been here,
been here, right? And I believe someone said is that, you know, we were disillusioned when Obama became president, and we thought this job was done, right? We thought that, you know, racism was over, that, you know, we had this first Black president, and we don't have anything else to worry about. But the same things again that we're seeing today were the same that happening under the Obama presidency. You know, Trump has only put a magnifying glass over these issues. So when we elect Biden and Harris into this office, because I'm speaking it into existence, when we do elect them into office, we can't fall back again into that state of disillusion. We have to say that, yes, we're putting them into this space, but we need to recognize that the issues are still happening with them in office, and we need to work to uproot all that stuff that happened over time.
Yeah, you know, how do we inspire young people to become engaged in this fight? You know what I'm saying? For me, and this is something that each one of us pretty much have talked about individually, I just can't sit on the sideline. I don't know. There's just something in me that I can't. I have never. I don't care how much I don't like it. You know, too many of people that I have never gotten a chance to know. You know what I'm saying? Didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Russell said something the other night that was so amazing. He said, you know, we have to honor those that didn't make it, but at some point we have to start showing up for the people who did make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So Keyshawn, what do you think, you know, how do we do this? You know what I'm saying? Because here's the reality. The 6 of us do this. We do this every single day. There are 350 million people we need to get in this.
So to connect with the young people, talking to my sister, I was like, I got to get a TikTok. First, that's number one on the thing, get a TikTok. But you know, I talked to them about, so my sister's going off to college at Georgia Southern, and I talked to her about this election and tell her that it's important for her, because this will be the first election that she'll have the opportunity to vote in. It's important for her to understand what the president does, what the Congress does. I think we as a society have failed our children in educating them about civics and the importance of whether you're an attorney general or whether you are the dog catcher, what is the person's role? And so you have to start at the root, and we need to educate our children. That's the first thing. And talk to them about creating a society where they don't have to want for anything. They don't have to want for housing. They don't have to want for food. They don't have to want for safety, because they have everything that they need. And so that's how I try to talk to young people and inspire people, is that trying to figure out what their want is and figuring out how we can meet that need. And that's what we do every day, each one of us.
You know, Tavon, you are a huge HBCU graduate. This current president is, you know, running around the country talking about how much he has just, you know, done for the HBCUs. And, you know, be damned that, you know, Black people have been doing for HBCUs as long as HBCUs have been around. Do you think that has any impact on the people that are, for the Black students that are in these institutions, do you think that Donald Trump, and I don't believe this, but I was listening to some punditry, obviously, you know what I'm saying, that said that they're interested to see how HBCU, students and graduates, if they decide to give Trump a chance to do some more.
Just as you brought a bunch of university presidents to the White House to take a photo, does not guarantee, HBCU votes.
Correct.
A lot of campaigns, it's just like, they group HBCUs into like the college and millennial outreach kind of thing. Like HBCU campus, it's a different approach to take to talk to those students. I think no one has really came up and spoke to say, hey, HBCU students, we want you to vote. We want you to engage with us. And so I don't think Trump has secured that space. But to answer your question about how to connect with that specific base, is to one, take all these jackets and let them know you can do the exact same thing these people are doing. You can lead, you can advocate. HBCU are have a huge heritage in people stepping out and leading and being a fight for change. All of our prominent leaders, the majority of them have came from HBCUs, so they can do the exact same thing as us. I believe it exists. You just got to see, but let's find it.
Is on the line to keep our country going, and since COVID-19 hit, it's one gut punch after another. And what has the COVID fallout done to our babies? Well, I'm here at the Early Childhood Education Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, which has been closed for months. Childcare was already hard to find before the pandemic. Now, parents are stuck. No idea when schools can safely reopen, and even fewer childcare options. The devastation is enormous. And the way I see it, big problems demand big solutions. Now, I love a good plan. And Joe Biden has some really good plans. Plans to bring back union jobs and
she go with her plans.
Plans to increase Social Security benefits, cancel billions in student loan debt, and make our bankruptcy laws work for families instead of the creditors who cheat them. These plans reflect a central truth. Our economic system has been rigged to give bailouts to billionaires and kick dirt in the face of everyone else.
Wow.
But we can build a thriving economy by investing in families and fixing what's broken. Joe's plan to build back better includes making the wealthy pay their fair share, holding corporations accountable, repairing racial inequities, and fighting corruption in Washington. Let me tell you about one of Joe's plans that's especially close to my heart: childcare. As a little girl growing up in Oklahoma, what I wanted most in the world was to be a teacher. I loved teaching. And when I had babies and was juggling my first big teaching job down in Texas, it was hard, but I could do hard. The thing that almost sank me, childcare. One night, my Aunt B called just to check in, and I thought I was fine. But then I just broke down and started to cry. I had tried holding it all together. Without reliable childcare, working was nearly impossible. And when I told Aunt B I was going to quit my job, I thought my heart would break. And then she said the words that changed my life. I can't get there tomorrow, but I'll come on Thursday. And she arrived with 7 suitcases and a Pekingese named Buddy and stayed for 16 years.
Wow.
I get to be here tonight because of my Aunt B. I learned a fundamental truth. Nobody makes it on their own. And yet, here we are, 2 generations of working parents later. And if you have a baby and don't have an Aunt B, you're on your own. And here's why that is wrong. We build infrastructure like roads and bridges and communication systems.
I wish this woman was the damn nominee.
That infrastructure helps us all because it keeps our economy going. It's time to recognize that childcare is part of the basic infrastructure of this nation. It's infrastructure for families. Joe and Kamala will make high-quality childcare affordable for every family, make preschool universal, and raise the wages of every childcare worker. Now, it's just one plan, but It gives you an idea of how we get this country working for everyone. Donald Trump's ignorance and incompetence have always been a danger to our country. COVID-19 was Trump's biggest test. He failed miserably. Today, America has the most COVID deaths in the world and an economic collapse. And both crises are falling hardest on Black and brown families.
Okay.
Millions out of millions more trapped in cycles of poverty, millions on the brink of losing their homes, millions of restaurants and stores hanging by a thread. This crisis is bad, and it didn't have to be this way. This crisis is on Donald Trump and the Republicans who enable him. On November 3rd, we will hold them all accountable. So, whether you're planning to vote wearing a mask or vote by mail, please take out your phone right now and text VOTE to 30330. We all need to be in the fight to get Joe and Kamala elected. And after November, we all need to stay in the fight to get big things done.
Wow.
We stay in this fight so that when our children and our grandchildren ask what we did during this dark chapter in our nation's history, we will be able to look them squarely in the eye and say, we organized, we persisted, and we changed America.
I mean,
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a speech right there.
That was great. He needs to be somewhere in the administration, like somewhere.
But see, that's the nerve. That's the scary part, though, is because in Massachusetts, I mean, she barely won her Senate seat. So that's a gamble that we would have to make. You know what I'm saying? Is it something that we do need to have her in the Treasury Department, or do we still need her in the Senate, maybe as a Senate Majority Leader? You know what I'm saying? To fix all of that bureaucratic BS. You know what I'm saying, that Mitch McConnell has implemented. But what are y'all's thoughts? I mean, what are your just general thoughts? And I'm going to go ahead and put the side-by-side up just because I think we're getting ready to get some big speeches. So, Andre, what are you feeling here from Elizabeth Warren?
Man, so after Castro dropped out of the race, I pretty much switched over to Senator Warren. I just felt that she spoke to the progressive politics that, I hold dear, to my heart. Now, while she's not perfect, she's made mistakes, but like we said before, there is room for the extension of grace for, the comments she's made about, her Native American ancestry. If we're giving Senator Harris a pass on, criminal justice reform in the sense of, trying to look at her record holistically, I think we do the same for Senator Warren. And she fought, literally, she has been fighting for decades. Like even before she was a senator, as a law professor at Harvard, she was fighting, for consumers, right? She literally built the Consumer Protection Bureau.
Yeah.
She could not lead because of what? Sexism. She, ran for that Senate seat and she won. She has been a voice in the U.S. Senate that has been a champion of progressive politics. And, when she says dream big, fight hard, I actually believe that she believes in this reimagination of our nation. And I think that this speech just literally spoke to, who she is as a leader in this country.
Yeah, Tavon, you said in our group, you said Secretary of Education. So you see Elizabeth Warren still at the forefront of our policy making, of our decision making, of our government.
I feel that she gets it. Like she understands. And I was a college student when Betsy DeVos was, she's still in this space, and I just felt that, there was no connection to, what students go through. There's no personal feel and understanding, that, hey, these students in situations like we are having now with a pandemic, we've seen that the way they've treated this situation. I think she honestly can fit anywhere, but I think the setting they just gave with her and like the school background, it was like, okay, is this some of the message you guys are giving me? So we don't know, but I think that background they gave really hit on with her tonight.
Mustafa, what are you feeling?
For me, I'm just really sitting with the theme that of her speech. For me, I know it was really about education, but it more specifically it was about the community that helps you get through these times, the village that you have to keep you pushing and keep you going forward. And the whole theme of this day is a more perfect union. And we can get to that more perfect union without that village, without that community. Because in the past, I mean, we haven't been a more perfect union, right? And so we need that village, we need that community to have a more perfect union that represents inclusive education system, that represents, getting folks out of prison, and that represents all of these other oppressive systems that we're going through. So I really love the message of the community, of the village that we need to push forward.
Let's hear President Obama.
Now, this isn't a normal convention. It's not a normal time. So tonight, I want to talk as plainly as I can about the stakes in this election. Because what we do these next 76 days will echo through generations to come. I'm in Philadelphia, where our Constitution was drafted and signed. It wasn't a perfect document. It allowed for the inhumanity of slavery and failed to guarantee women, and even men who didn't own property, the right to participate in the political process. But embedded in this document was a North Star that would guide future generations. A system of representative government, a democracy, through which we could better realize our highest ideals. Through civil war and bitter struggles, we improved this Constitution to include the voices of those who'd once been left out. And gradually, we made this country more just, and more equal, and more free. The one constitutional office elected by all of the people is the presidency. So at a minimum, we should expect a president to feel a sense of responsibility for the safety and welfare of all 330 million of us, regardless of what we look like, how we worship, who we love, how much money we have, or who we voted for. But we should also expect a president to be the custodian of this democracy. We should expect that regardless of ego, ambition, or political beliefs, the president will preserve, protect, and defend the freedoms and ideals that so many Americans marched for, went to jail for, fought for, and died for. I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously. And he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care.
Wow.
But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves.
Ooh.
Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone, while those at the top taken more than ever. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before. Now, I know that in times as polarized as these, most of you have already made up your mind. But maybe you're still not sure which candidate you'll vote for, or whether you'll vote at all. Maybe you're tired of the direction we're headed, but you can't see a better path yet. Or you just don't know enough about the person who wants to lead us there. So let me tell you about my friend, Joe Biden. 12 years ago, when I began my search for a vice president, I didn't know I'd end up finding a brother. Joe and I come from different places, different generations, but what I quickly came to admire about Biden is his resilience, born of too much struggle, his empathy, born of too much grief. Joe is a man who learned early on to treat every person he meets with respect and dignity, living by the words his parents taught him. No one's better than you, Joe, but you're better than nobody. That empathy, that decency, the belief that everybody counts, that's who Joe is. When he talks with someone who's lost her job, Joe remembers the night his father sat him down to say that he'd lost his. When Joe listens to a parent who's trying to hold it all together right now, he does it as a single dad who took the train back to Wilmington each and every night so he could tuck his kids into bed. When he meets with military families who've lost their hero, he does it as a kindred spirit, the parent of an American soldier, somebody whose faith has endured the hardest loss there is. For 8 years, Joe was the last one in the room whenever I faced a big decision. He made me a better president, and he's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. And in my friend Kamala Harris, he's chosen an ideal partner who is more than prepared for the job. Someone who knows what it's like to overcome barriers and who's made a career fighting to help others live out their own American dream. Along with the experience needed to get things done, Joe and Kamala have concrete policies that will turn their vision of a better, fairer, stronger country into reality. They will get this pandemic under control, like Joe did when he helped me manage H1N1 and prevent an Ebola outbreak from reaching our shores. They'll expand healthcare to more Americans, like Joe and I did 10 years ago, when he helped craft the Affordable Care Act and nail down the votes to make it the law. They'll rescue the economy, like Joe helped me do after the Great Recession. I asked him to manage the Recovery Act, which jump-started the longest stretch of job growth in history. And he sees this moment now, not as a chance to get back to where we were, but to make long overdue changes so that our economy actually makes life a little easier for everybody. Whether it's the waitress trying to raise a kid on her own, or the shift worker always on the edge of getting laid off, or the student figuring out how to pay for next semester's classes. Joe and Kamala will restore our standing in the world. And as we've learned from this pandemic, that matters. Joe knows the world, and the world knows him. He knows that our true strength comes from setting an example that the world wants to follow. A nation that stands with democracy, not dictators. A nation that can inspire and mobilize others to overcome threats like climate change and terrorism, poverty and disease. But more than anything, what I know about Joe, what I know about Kamala, is that they actually care about every American. And that they care deeply about this democracy. They believe that in a democracy, the right to vote is sacred, and we should be making it easier for people to cast their ballots, not harder. They believe that no one, including the president, is above the law, and that no public official, including the president, should use their office to enrich themselves or their supporters. They understand that in this democracy, the commander-in-chief does not use the men and women of our military who are willing to risk everything to protect our nation as political props to deploy against peaceful protesters on our own soil. They understand that political opponents aren't un-American just because they disagree with you. The free press isn't the enemy, but the way we hold officials accountable. That our ability to work together to solve big problems like a pandemic depend on a fidelity to facts and science and logic, and not just making stuff up. None of this should be controversial. These shouldn't be Republican principles or Democratic principles. They are American principles. But at this moment, this president and those who enable him have shown they don't believe in these things. Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better. But here's the thing. No single American can fix this country alone. Not even a president. Democracy was never meant to be transactional. You give me your vote, I make everything better. It requires an active and informed citizenry. So I'm also asking you to believe in your own ability, to embrace your own responsibility as citizens, to make sure that the basic tenets of our democracy endure. Because that's what's at stake right now. Our democracy. Look, I understand why a lot of Americans are down on government. The way the rules have been set up and abused in Congress make it easier for special interests to stop progress than to make progress. Believe me, I know it. I understand why a white factory worker who's seen his wages cut or his job shipped overseas might feel like the government no longer looks out for him, and why a black mom might feel like it never looked out for her at all. I understand why a new immigrant might look around this country and wonder whether there's still a place for him here. Why a young person might look at politics right now. The circus of it all, the meanness and the lies and conspiracy theories, and think, what is the point? Well, here's the point. This president and those in power, those who benefit from keeping things the way they are counting on your cynicism. They know they can't win you over with their policies. So they're hoping to make it as hard as possible for you to vote and to convince you that your vote does not matter. That is how they win. That is how they get to keep making decisions that affect your life and the lives of the people you love. That's how the economy will keep getting skewed to the wealthy and well-connected. How our health systems will let more people fall through the cracks. That's how a democracy withers, until it's no democracy at all. And we cannot let that happen. Do not let them take away your power. Do not let them take away your democracy. Make a plan right now for how you are going to get involved and vote. Do it as early as you can and tell your family and friends how they can vote too. Do what Americans have done for over 2 centuries when faced with even tougher times than this. All those quiet heroes who found the courage to keep marching, keep pushing in the face of hardship and injustice. Last month, we lost a giant of American democracy in John Lewis. And some years ago, I sat down with John and a few remaining leaders of the early civil rights movement. One of them told me he never imagined he'd walk into the White House and see a president who looked like his grandson. And then he told me that he had looked it up. And it turned out that on the very day that I was born, he was marching into a jail cell, trying to end Jim Crow segregation in the South. What we do echoes through generations. Whatever our backgrounds, we are all the children of Americans who fought the good fight. Great-grandparents working in fire traps and sweatshops without rights or representation. Farmers losing their dreams to dust. Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told, go back where you come from. Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worship. Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth. And yet, instead of giving up, they joined together. And they said, somehow, some way, we are going to make this work. We are going to bring those words in our founding documents to life.
This is the most impassioned I've seen him not giving a eulogy.
I have seen that spirit rising these past few years. Folks of every age and background who packed city centers and airports and rural roads so that families wouldn't be separated, so that another classroom wouldn't get shot up, so that our kids won't grow up on an uninhabitable planet. Americans of all races joining together to declare, in the face of injustice and brutality at the hands of the state, that Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
No more.
I don't know why I just got to chill on that. I don't know. It's because we haven't heard him say that.
The sting of racism. To the young people who led us this summer, telling us
feeling
we
it.
need to be better.
Yeah, he is.
In so many ways, you are this country's dreams fulfilled. Earlier generations had to be persuaded that everyone has equal worth. For you, it's a given, a conviction. And what I want you to know is that for all its messiness and frustrations, your system of self-government can be harnessed to help you realize those convictions for all of us. You can give our democracy new meaning. You can take it to a better place. You're the missing ingredient. The ones who will decide whether or not America becomes the country that fully lives up to its creed. That work will continue long after this election. But any chance of success depends entirely on the outcome of this election. This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win. So we have to get busy building it up by pouring all our efforts into these 76 days and by voting like never before for Joe and Kamala and candidates up and down the ticket, so that we leave no doubt about what this country that we love stands for today and for all our days to come. Stay safe. God bless.
Wow.
Wow.
Barack H.
Yes.
Obama.
Oh my gosh, that was
The
that was
Obamas
remarkable.
have literally made the best case for this Biden-Harris ticket, right?
Yeah.
Like Michelle on Monday, and now President Obama here tonight. Man, that was amazing.
And two, in
Yeah,
a
that
way
was-
that it's just not. It seems authentic. Like I saw someone say something
That
about
was
Michelle.
real.
Like they're speaking to
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah.
No words. Right.
It's like I don't even know where to begin.
Well,
Like,
I'm stuck on the you are
Right,
the
absolutely.
dream realized.
Yeah, that was good.
I think
That was-
so many young people trying to find their voice and trying to find out which space. So right now, we just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling you, like, you're starting it now. You are setting up this legacy
Exactly.
future of America. It exists.
Exactly.
Don't let anyone tell you other stuff.
I mean, he started off by saying, like, the Constitution didn't have it all. And there was this fight that endured, and now we're here, and now it's you. Like, you are what we need right now. And you are, in a lot of ways, what no one could have predicted in the early, foundings of our country. Like, that was such a powerful narrative. And
That parallel was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing that I had to just sit in is that, because I've been very critical of Barack Obama recently. Kamala Harris just became the official nominee. So is that what that man meant? I remember the first time my grandmother and my grandfather brought me to go vote, right, for him, when they voted for him. And my grandfather, a Vietnam War veteran, as we walked home from the fire station, broke down. This is a man who, in the 1950s and 60s, when it was time, to go to war and to fight America's war, Black men had three options. Either you die, you go to the war, you go to jail. And those were his options. He didn't sign up for this super patriarch, he wasn't this extreme patriot. But he believed that this was a country that we would be able to do something like this. Mm-hmm. And I can only think of it and hold on to all of those people who have fought to make this happen. Let's go ahead and listen to Kamala's family nominate her.
Ready to have my back. Well, now we've got your back as you and Joe fight to protect our democracy.
And there's no union more perfect than the one that brings us all to your kitchen table every Sunday night for stir fry, feta chicken, or spaghetti and meatball family dinners.
And now that I'm a mom, they're showing my daughter and so many girls around the world who look like them what's possible and what it's like to move through the world as fierce, formidable, phenomenal women in their own unique way.
I love you. I admire you. I am so proud of you. And even though Mommy's not here to see her first daughter step into history, the entire nation will see in your strength, your integrity, your intelligence, and your optimism the values that she raised us with.
We love you, Mama.
This is like real emotional.
Proud of you, Auntie.
You mean the world to us, Kamala.
And we could not be more excited
to share you with the world as the next
Vice President
of the United States.
Joe Biden has selected Kamala Harris as his running mate.
She is the first Black woman, first South Asian woman to be named on the Democratic ticket.
This is a historic pick.
Someone who looks like us on a presidential ticket. That's crazy.
Kamala Harris did that. She was born in Oakland.
The daughter of immigrants.
The daughter of Sean.
Big sister and big sister. She is an HBCU grad.
Come on, Howard. These AKAs gonna be relentless.
Right.
That's
it's gonna be hearing a lot about HQ.
Okay.
Really.
You know?
Got a big future.
Best role models. Kamala Harris is like a dream to me. Senator Harris cares about people. There's no doubt about it. When she said for the people, it is in every ounce of who she is. She's for us. She's
You know, in an uncritical view, just thinking about what this moment means, I think that the last 20 minutes and the next 10 minutes that we're going to get is the best part of this convention, the best part of this moment, is seeing the Black women who have delivered and saved this democracy time and time after again, finally get their spot on a national ticket. I can't wait to call my grandmother.
And it's so crazy that yesterday we celebrated the centennial of the 19th Amendment, right? And you think about all the Black women who were erased from that moment. And you think about even going back further to a woman like Sojourner Truth, who fought, for Black women to be included, in these conversations. And now, 100 years later, a Black woman is now, about to be the second most powerful person in the world. Yeah, that narrative is like really great. Like politics and like policy aside.
As all of that aside,
Yeah.
there is no way to not look at this and feel good.
Yeah.
It's a powerful moment right now.
Oh, look at her setup!
There we go.
It's really an honor to be speaking with you tonight. That I am here tonight is a testament to the dedication of generations before me. Women and men who believed so fiercely in the promise of equality, liberty, and justice for all. This week marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, and we celebrate the women who fought for that right. Yet so many of the Black women who helped secure that victory were still prohibited from voting long after its ratification. But they were undeterred. Without fanfare or recognition, they organized and testified and rallied and marched and fought, not just for their vote, but for a seat at the table. These women and the generations that followed worked to make democracy and opportunity real in the lives of all of us who followed. They paved the way for the trailblazing leadership of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And these women inspired us to pick up the torch and fight on. Women like Mary Church Terrell, Mary Cloyd Bethune, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Diane Nash, Constance Baker Motley, and the great Shirley Chisholm. We're not often taught their stories, but as Americans, we all stand on their shoulders. And there's another woman whose name isn't known, whose story isn't shared, another woman whose shoulders I stand on.
A mama.
And that's my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris. She came here from India at age 19 to pursue her dream of curing cancer. At the University of California, Berkeley, she met my father, Donald Harris, who had come from Jamaica to study economics. They fell in love in that most American way while marching together for justice in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. In the streets of Oakland and Berkeley, I got a stroller's eye view of people getting into what the great John Lewis called good trouble. When I was 5, my parents split, and my mother raised us mostly on her own. Like so many mothers, she worked around the clock to make it work, packing lunches before we woke up and paying bills after we went to bed, helping us with homework at the kitchen table and shuttling us to church for choir practice. She made it look easy, though it never was. My mother instilled in my sister Maya and me the values that would chart the course of our lives. She raised us to be proud, strong Black women, and she raised us to know and be proud of our Indian heritage. She taught us to put family first, the family you're born into and the family you choose. Family is my husband, Doug, who I met on a blind date set up by my best friend. Family is our beautiful children, Cole and Ella, who call me Mamala. Family is my sister. Family is my best friend, my nieces, and my godchildren. Family is my uncles, my aunts, and my chitties. Family is Mrs. Shelton, my second mother who lived 2 doors
I mean,
down.
she looks the part.
Family is my beloved Alpha Kappa Alpha, our Divine Nine, and
Okay.
my HBCU brothers and sisters. Family is the friends I turn to when my mother, the most important person in my life, passed away from cancer. And even as she taught us to keep our family at the center of our world, she also pushed us to see a world beyond ourselves. She taught us to be conscious and compassionate about the struggles of all people, to believe public service is a noble cause and the fight for justice is a shared responsibility. That led me to become a lawyer, a district attorney, attorney general, and a United States senator. And at every step of the way, I've been guided by the words I spoke from the first time I stood in a courtroom. Kamala Harris, for the people. I have fought for children and survivors of sexual assault. I fought against transnational criminal organizations. I took on the biggest banks and helped take down one of the biggest for-profit colleges. I know a predator when I see one. My mother taught me that service to others gives life purpose and meaning. And oh, how I wish she were here tonight, but I know she's looking down on me from above. I keep thinking about that 25-year-old Indian woman, all of 5 feet tall, who gave birth to me at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. On that day, she probably could have never imagined that I would be standing before you now and speaking these words. I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America. I do so committed to the values she taught me, to the word that teaches me to walk by faith and not by sight, and to a vision passed on through generations of Americans, one that Joe Biden shares, a vision of our nation as a beloved community where all are welcome, no matter what we look like, no matter where we come from or who we love. A country where we may not agree on every detail, but we are united by the fundamental belief that every human being is of infinite worth, deserving of compassion, dignity, and respect. A country where we look out for one another, where we rise and fall as one, where we face our challenges and celebrate our triumphs together. Today, that country feels distant. Donald Trump's failure of leadership has cost lives and livelihoods. If you're a parent struggling with your child's remote learning, or you're a teacher struggling on the other side of that screen, you know what we're doing right now is not working. And we are a nation that is grieving the loss of life, the loss of jobs, the loss of opportunities, the loss of normalcy, and yes, the loss of certainty. And while this virus touches us all, we got to be honest, it is not an equal opportunity offender. Black, Latino and indigenous people are suffering and dying disproportionately.
Ooh, say that.
And this is not a coincidence. It is the effect of structural racism, of inequity in education and
Name it.
technology, healthcare and housing, job security and transportation. The injustice in reproductive and maternal health care, in the excessive use of force by police, and in our broader criminal justice system.
And this is already different than Barack Obama.
It has no eyes.
Oh, for sure.
And
You know,
yet
who
it
is
knows
scared to name these things even when
exactly
he's no
how
longer
we
president.
see each other and how we treat each other. And let's be clear, there is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do
Sheesh.
for George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor, for the lives of too many others to name, for our children, and for all of us. We've got to do the work to fulfill that promise of equal justice under law. Because here's the thing, none of us are free until all of us are free. So we're at an inflection point. The constant chaos leaves us adrift. The incompetence makes us feel afraid. The callousness makes us feel alone. It's a lot. And here's the thing, we can do better and deserve so much more. We must elect a president who will bring something different, something better, and do the important work. A president who will bring all of us together, Black, white, Latino, Asian, Indigenous, to achieve the future we collectively want. We must elect Joe Biden. And I will tell you, I knew Joe as vice president. I knew Joe on the campaign trail. And I first got to know Joe as the father of my friend. So Joe's son, Bo, and I served as attorneys general of our states, Delaware and California. During the Great Recession, he and I spoke on the phone nearly every day, working together to win back billions of dollars for homeowners from the big banks that foreclosed on people's homes. And Bo and I, we would talk about his family, how as a single father, Joe would spend 4 hours every day riding the train back and forth from Wilmington to Washington. Bo and Hunter got to have breakfast every morning with their dad. They went to sleep every night with the sound of his voice reading bedtime stories. And while they endured an unspeakable loss, those two little boys always knew that they were deeply, unconditionally loved. And what also moved me about Joe is the work that he did as he was going back and forth. This is the leader who wrote the Violence Against Women Act and enacted the assault weapons ban, who as vice president implemented the Recovery Act, which brought our country back from the Great Recessions. He championed the Affordable Care Act, protecting millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions, who spent decades promoting American values and interests around the world. Joe, he believes we stand with our allies and stand up to our adversaries. Right now, we have a president who turns our tragedies.
And the energy she has as if the convention center is filled.
Joe will be a president
That's it.
who turns our challenges into purpose. Joe will bring us together to build an economy that doesn't leave anyone behind, where a good paying job is the floor, not the ceiling. Joe will bring us together to end this pandemic and make sure that we are prepared for the next one. Joe will bring us together to squarely face and dismantle racial injustice, furthering the work of generations. Joe and I believe that we can build that beloved community, one that is strong and decent, just and kind, one in which we can all see ourselves. That's the vision that our parents and grandparents fought for, the vision that made my own life possible, the vision that makes the American promise, for all its complexities and imperfections, a promise worth fighting for. So make no mistake, the road ahead is not easy. We may stumble, we may fall short, but I pledge to you that we will act boldly and deal with our challenges honestly. We will speak truths, and we will act with the same faith in you that we ask you to place in us. We believe that our country, all of us, will stand together for a better future. And we already are. We see it in the doctors, the nurses, the home health care workers, and frontline workers who are risking their lives to save people they've never met. We see it in the teachers and truck drivers, the factory workers and farmers, the postal workers and poll workers,
Yeah.
all
Right,
putting their own
right.
safety on the line to help us get through this pandemic. And we see it in so many of you who are working, not just to get us through our current crisis, but to somewhere better. There's something happening all across our country. It's not about Joe or me. It's about you. And it's about us. People of all ages and colors and creeds who are, yes, taken to the streets, and also persuading our family members, rallying our friends, organizing our neighbors, and getting out the vote. And we have shown that when we vote, we expand access to health care and expand access to the ballot box and ensure that more working families can make a decent living. And I'm so inspired by a new generation. You are pushing us to realize the ideals of our nation,
That was good.
us
That was a
to
good line.
live the values we share.
It's that thing that y'all were saying.
and
She's
fairness,
trying to get those progressives to understand you
and
push
love.
me, I push you. Let's get
Right.
to a good place together.
Patriots.
Right, right.
To remind us that to love our country is to fight for the ideals of our country. In this election, we have a chance to change the course of history. We're all in this fight. You, me, and Joe, together. What an awesome responsibility. What an awesome privilege. So let's fight with conviction. Let's fight with hope. Let's fight with confidence in ourselves and a commitment to each other, to the America we know is possible, the America we love. And years from now, this moment will have passed, and our children and our grandchildren will look in our eyes, and they're going to ask us, where were you when the stakes were so high? They will ask us, what was it like? And we will tell them. We will tell them not just how we felt, we will tell them what we did. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Go off, sis.
Come on.
Yeah, that was good. Yay!
Wow.
That was good.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
The last 10
Spectacular.
minutes has been amazing.
she's great. Look how happy she is. Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking too, like how she connected it back to that. Where are you in this moment? Where were you in this
What are
moment?
you doing?
What are you doing today?
Right.
And it wasn't like in a way that's shaming people, but it was in a way that's very inviting, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like come into this work.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll say, you have to vote, or you're going to die, and this sort of doomsday type.
Yeah.
It's just very, very inviting.
Aww.
I love it.
Is that Kid Wash?
They can't be together.
Wow.
This was her campaign song.
I know that's not Mary J.
This
Blige.
was her campaign song. I'm so glad that people. Right, I'm so glad that people have the opportunity to meet and understand the Kamala Harris that I've known since 2007. I tell people, I say, this is a moment for Black women, every Black woman in my family. And everything that she said in that speech is true. And Black women are the ones who are out here fighting and doing the work consistently. My mom, grandmom, and aunt were the ones who taught me about politics and told me the importance of voting and giving back to my community. And I think that Senator Harris was able to include that in her speech about how we lift as we climb. And then just wrapping up the entire night of building a more perfect union, she invited you. She invited our viewers. She invited everyday Americans to be a part of this journey, because we've just seen so much hatred and vitriol come from the White House. And we know that's not who we are as people. So I'm excited. I'm holding back tears, but I'm excited
No, I mean, I
for
feel
Vice
the
President
same
Harris.
exact way. I mean, it's one of those things. I just don't know how many grandma's prayers went into this moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm rarely speechless. But that was the thing that drew me into her when she gave that speech in Iowa. She said justice is on the ballot, healthcare is on the ballot, normalcy is on the ballot, we are on the ballot, love is on the ballot. I mean, and she was talking about this in Iowa, and that was one of the best speeches she had ever given. And tonight, what she did was she made that case of the bridge of what Joe Biden is doing. You know what I'm saying? When she said this new generation, after she was talking about, you push me, the same thing that I am asking y'all to do for us, I'm going to do for you too. And that on top of, right next to Barack Obama, saying that you are the missing ingredient to this puzzle.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason why I wanted to put together this panel and these panels throughout the week anyways, because as disillusioned as we have become over the last few weeks, I refuse to that question right there. Is that in 50 years, when my children ask me, what did I do in that moment? I can't look at them and say nothing. The day that I decided to leave Congress, I called my grandmother that morning and I said, Mom, how did you do? What did y'all do? You know what I'm saying? When you were in the face of all this injustice in the 1960s, 1950s and 1960s, what did you do? And she said, we had no choice but to do something. We had no idea if we would live. We had no idea that something would change, but we had to do something because of this conversation that you called me for in 2020 to ask me, what did I do?
Yes.
And this is a monumental night for this country. That there is no way to, the rebuke to Donald Trump, Donald Trump tweeted after Michelle Obama, after her convention speech and said that, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Barack Obama. And that, that's bullshit. He's completely trashed. But the perfect rebuke to Donald Trump is a Kamala Harris. Is someone that makes you feel that good. Maya, as the only Black woman on the panel, what does tonight mean for you?
I mean, I don't really know how to properly express it. It's more of a feeling right now than it is language. It's just so profound. And I mean, I think Kamala, she came on and she made her case, but the most like powerful line to me was that line when she said, "You are pushing me to be better," which is, I think she needed the like American people to really hear that, because of all of the things that, you know, have been circulating about her. Like, she is ready to come into this role and be totally honest and totally transparent about her career, but also lend a listening ear to the things that, you know, people really want her to act on. And I think that was so powerful about like her speech, is that she really understands that she's here for more than herself. She's here for people who are, you know, really relying on her as this historic figure at this point. And I just thought it was so great. It's really hard to express everything I'm feeling, but you know, happiness is like the simplest, you know, word.
Yeah. What does this, you know, we kind of mentioned, I can't wait tomorrow morning to call my grandmother and my sisters. You know, I can't, because to them, you know, especially for my little sisters who are 6 years old, you know, or 7 and 8 now, oh Lord, they're getting old. They don't know anything about the policy.
Yeah.
They don't know nothing about any of that bullshit. But what they do know is that someone that looks like them, someone with their hair texture or remotely close to it, as that little Black boy looked up at, you know, President Obama in the Oval Office, wondering if his hair, you know, a lot of people have been talking about Mustafa this last week since Kamala Harris was announced, about we need more than symbolism. But Black people, I mean, it's been the symbolism to get us through. We haven't had anything else.
Yes. Yeah.
Great point.
For me, it's like even listening to her speech and just I'm like really sitting with it right now, because it was an emotional one. And Stefan, you already know how I had previously felt about Kamala. Like, it was a lot that I was sitting with about her past and like some things that she represented. But like, her speech gives me hope. You know, it gives me motivation to lift up everybody around me, to build up everybody. And as we talk about building this future, it's the hope from her speech that's going to allow me to do that. It's the hope from her speech that's going to allow me to connect and encourage all of the folks around me. So I'm feeling really inspired by her speech.
Right.
I think about, like, just, you mentioned Maya earlier, the 1619 Project, right? And think about those early Black women who were forcibly removed from their home and had to travel on a ship, you know, across an ocean to a place where they knew nothing of, and had to toil this land and to build this country, right? You think about Harriet Tubman, who had the audacity to lead people from the South to the North to be free. You think about Sojourner Truth, who had the audacity to say, "I too am a woman," right? You know, and Black women deserve the right to vote. And you think about Ida B. Wells Barnett, who, you know, wanted to, you know, stop Black people from getting lynched. And she mentioned Mary Church Burrell, right? And Mary McLeod Bethune, right? Diane Nash, and like all these Black women who literally are a part of a lineage of America. And to see this as sort of a culmination of some of their work is just like so fucking beautiful, man. It really is.
Well, as you can see, I'm about to cry. So
yeah, it just is something beautiful. And I think about all the Black women whose names we won't know throughout.
We'll never know,
right? You know, who toiled, who organized, who lost their lives for having the audacity to stand up, to speak up, to hope. I think Kamala Harris's speech tonight just really spoke, you know, to that, right? And what we can become, the little girls now who who can now have the audacity to say, oh, I can be president, right? I can be governor, I can be congressperson, I can be, senator, I can be anything that I want to be. And I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, Tavon, what are you feeling? Kashawn, you're gonna go last since you've known this from the beginning
It's
that your girl was gonna be something. You already knew that she was going.
I'm not the emotional one, but I just, in my head, I'm gonna be rewatching that acceptance speech
quite a few times
for the rest of my life, pretty much, because it was so much of her, one, humanizing herself and using that platform to tell her story, and just the highlight about her mother, highlight about it's been all of this. I've been playing Brown Skin Girl in my head of like just that video itself of Brown Skin Girl made me feel how I just watched, Kamala accept her nomination. So I think this is historic for women everywhere, all nationalities. It's very impactful, and especially I'm gonna call my girl probably tonight. I'm not just probably sleeping. I'm gonna give her a call and just say, hey, are you witnessing this? Are you seeing this? And you're here to this day to see that this is a that happen. So, like you said, politics aside, this is history, and it gives me chills right now. I'm gonna sleep good tonight, knowing that I was able to share this space with you all to all see that moment.
Yeah, Keyshawn, she said, and this is something that it was the ending of this speech.
Mm-hmm.
That me and Joe believe that we can still build that beloved community. That we can change course, and what an awesome responsibility and privilege to fight with conviction and hope and promise of a tomorrow. And the part that gave me chills is she said with a smile that just it brought you in, you, me, and Joe.
And I think it goes back to one of those, I'm sure everybody on the panel has had one of those conversations with a Black woman, a pep talk from a Black woman, where she's like, you need to put your stuff together. Like, we're struggling, but we're gonna make it through. Yeah. And so I think that's what Kamala Harris was able to remind us, is that the power is with the people. We have the ability to change what's happening in our country. We have the ability to change the course that the country is going on with the coronavirus pandemic. We have the power to change how our Senate and our state, our democracy is made up. We have the power to make DC the 51st state. And so I think that all of this combined was just superb and truly what Black women have always done in our society, is just lift people up and care about others ahead of themselves. So I'm excited, and I know that we are going to all work our asses off to help build this country back better, to re-envision a new America, and to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris elected.
The whole reason why I wanted to do these, I've said it every night, is that I am not resigned to despair. I am not someone who walks around seeing the worst. I'm someone that is relentlessly committed to that greater thing. I have the idea. I'm a storyteller. The idea of a more perfect union. That idea that we are not perfect. We weren't created to be perfect. It's actually never going to be perfect. But it's a generation by generation thing to make this a little bit better. That we play our part. That we build our power, that we realize that we have the ability to build better futures. One of the things that Barack Obama said, and I've been talking about it so much, is that there were too many people, the part where he got emotional, there are too many people who have given just a little too much. And I don't think we've paid our due. I don't think enough of us have given the blood, sweat, tears, or even our lives to be able to say, we're going to sit this one out. That we don't want to punish this, that every part of their past is so bad I don't want to even do it. But what tonight in general reminds us of is that America is still that place where descendants of slaves could remake this place, that can give us the chance to begin again. Across the country, we are seeing our voting rights being stripped away. We are seeing, our right in front of our eyes, things being stolen from us. And I hate to be that person, but if they steal it because it's important. That when a Black person has access to the most nonviolent, transformational, counter as protest as possible thing to show up into a voting booth, they are taking with them millions of people who never had that opportunity and chance to do it. You know, the whole point of building a better future is the reality that we do it together. That each one of us, whatever your talent is, that you bring that into this arena. And so my call to action to the people who listen to this, who watch this, the people in our communities, the people that we get to interact with, is that these things don't stop and end during an election cycle. They absolutely don't. They keep going. It is an every single day thing. And guess what? On November 4th and on January 21st, when we have this new administration, we're still showing up and we're still protesting and we're still going to do our part, because that's our due. That's the thing that we pay as citizens of not just this country, but of this world. You know, tonight was a good night for Democrats. I think it was a good night for this country. I think it was a good night for all those people that came up or that are coming up in our world. So one last thing from each one of you. You know, if you could right now talk to anybody, you know what I'm saying? If you could give them some message, some word of advice to keep in the fight, what would you tell them? Tavon, we're going to start with you.
The first thing I would tell them is just, you know, find your passion. Find your passion and make it your way to fight and find a way to really make your voice heard in any way possible. Don't look at how someone else is advocating. Find the way that you want to advocate and make it your own. And that's the best way that you can go forward.
Absolutely. Maya?
You know, I think I would say, you know, kind of what you were saying, Stefan, is don't give in to despair. I mean, when we feel ourselves weakening because of we're in a state of crisis or whatever that might be, you know, that's only more motivation to keep pushing forward. And I think that's so important, is to not lose faith and to hold on to these kind of founding ideals, you know, and strive to make our country that much more better, especially in moments of crisis.
Absolutely. Keyshawn?
I would just tell people it's time to get to work. It's time to talk to your family, get 5 people registered to vote, request their their mail-in ballot, because we are trying to build a more perfect union, and you are inclusive of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Andre?
You are seen, you are heard, your work is not in vain, and that victory is on the horizon. If we just dig our heels in a little bit deeper and reach a little bit further. But there's one thing, we won't win without sweating. So are you ready to sweat?
Yeah. Mustafa?
I would say for us to not lose hope, to not believe that the world can be a better place, right? To not believe that we can't build that better future. We can build that better future if we can tell ourselves that we can do that together.
Yeah. You know, one of the most amazing things about this moment that our nation has been in is the connecting with people that I've been able to do, you know, across this country, people who are fired up and passionate about building that better place. One of the things that we have to realize is that each one of us already has the power. The power already rests with the people. The power is already in community. What are we doing to connect to each other? What I'm doing is having community conversations. What I'm doing is bringing people in like this that believe that there is still hope tomorrow, that we still have that audacity of transcendent hope, that we still believe in the greater promise of an American tomorrow. And one of the things that we all have said, and we have to keep pushing to our communities, is that we will not survive another 4 years of Donald Trump. But with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, we do have a chance to begin again. We do have a chance to right some wrongs, but they can't do it by themselves. You know what I'm saying? As we mentioned earlier, the power of the presidency, the institution of the presidency, its sole job is to preserve the republic at any means necessary. But it's the people on the ground who remind us of the things that we're fighting for. And so I want to thank you guys so much for joining us on this Night 3 panel, because it turned out to be my absolute favorite. And tomorrow night, we're ending the convention with Joe Biden accepting the nomination to be the next president of the United States of America. Y'all, thank you so much. And listen, I just want to thank y'all for the work that you do every single day. You know what I'm saying? That you help me remember, you know, Andre, Mustafa, y'all the people I call. you know, when everything seems a mess, that I just need some people who believe in hope. And so I thank you guys for being not only the connectors of power, but the connectors to hope. And that you remind us of the fact that we haven't paid our due yet, that we still have a brighter future to fight for. So I hope you guys have an amazing night. I hope y'all keep on keeping on. Most importantly, as Keyshawn said, that we get people registered to vote, that we get people registered to get their ballots that they can send in. But all in all, that we all take community power to build a more perfect union. Y'all have a great night. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks
Thank you.
so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.